So we are continuing our series here on hydrotherapy, looking at the theory and practice of hydrotherapy. And this is part 24 in the series that has been ongoing here for some time. Just a reminder that as you navigate any health challenge, you want to make sure that you partner with a medical practitioner that has a similar idea of care that you do, so that you can partner well. And that the things we talk about are just tools in your toolbox that you can use to maintain health or recover health. Others have used them successfully, but just make sure that anything you check out well for yourself, make sure it's going to fit your situation, not blindly accepting anything without doing your due diligence. The New York Advocate published a quote by Thomas Edison back in 1903 that said, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine. Will instruct his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet and the cause and prevention of disease." There are many doctors that don't give medicine today. They just refer them to somebody else. But that was a forward-thinking statement at that time. But even before that, it was noted in testimonies for the church that there are many ways of practicing the healing art, but there's only one way that heaven approves. So God created ways for us, the simple agencies of nature, to be specific about that. Pure air and water, that's where hydrotherapy comes in. Cleanliness, that's also hydrotherapy. Proper diet, purity of life, and a firm trust in God. So there are many that are dying because they don't have these simple agencies in their care and practice. It takes a bit to learn them. They're going out of date because people haven't taken the time to learn them. But the power isn't appreciated because it's not being utilized. But they're inexpensive, specifically compared to the drugs that replace them, both their expense and the taxing on their body. So many times people have a copay that is not as much as they would be paying for the actual medication. But if they were, the prices would be exorbitant. So it does get passed on to somebody somewhere, and it may be you and I through our taxes in one way or another because it's being paid for somehow. So 3 John 1 verse 2, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers." So we need to take care of our soul as well so that we can prosper. And that's our walk with God and Jesus. In Romans 12, 1 and 2, it says, "I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God." And that's not unreasonable. It's reasonable, a reasonable service. "And do not be conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." And we're admonished in the ministry of healing that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that we need to understand how our fearfully and wonderfully made body works, that we preserve it from harm and defilement because it is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And that's where God dwells as we allow him and invite him into our lives and follow his leading. So tonight we're going to be looking at some direct water applications, and specifically a variety of Pail pour treatments. So this poor guy is pouring a pail over himself. Usually the pail pour is done by somebody else. This is actually an ice water pail pour. But most of the treatments, the pail pours that we'll treat, are not ice pail pours. This is more of a bravado kind of a pail pour. But they pour water over the body or a body part, so it doesn't have to be the entire body. It can be a region or an area that needs some specific treatment. It's often used with other treatments, and it's simple to perform. Just needs an adequate place to do that. So a bathtub or a tub of some kind, whether it be a wash tub, that can catch the water that's being poured over. The benefit is it has a very powerful and unique effect, and that is because it's a high volume of water that's poured over the part that's being treated, as opposed to, say, a fomentation or a vaporization, those kinds of, or a poultice. That's not a lot of water. But a pail pour is using a volume of water. So it's unique to the other forms of hydrotherapy or water therapies that are utilized because it has a large volume of water that's being used. Now, when I say that, the traditional view today of hydrotherapy is pool time. So hydrotherapy from a physical therapy standpoint in most cases is someone doing a workout or range of motion exercises in a swimming pool kind of a situation. Yes, they use fomentations and things like that, water hydrotherapy on some occasions, but that's the kind of the first thought. And that's actually not the most powerful application of hydrotherapy today. The most powerful applications are the ones we've been talking about throughout this series here, which typically use low volumes of water as compared to the high volume of water in a pail pour. So there's a general pail pour, just a general outline of what's happening. You're pouring it over the entire body, or it could be over a region of the body too. It's used as a tonic. It's health promoting, and it is good for general body strengthening. It just gives vigor to the body. And over time, the temperature of the water is lowered. So you become conditioned to that pail pour. In fact, some will see pail pours that use a series of staggered cooler temperatures of water, and you can lower those sequences, and it gives the body more vigor and stamina and strength. We learned of an individual who had trained himself in cold water situations, kind of practiced being in cold water back during World War II. So he was doing his own hydrotherapy, and he was sent across the ocean on an ocean liner, and they were afraid to send him because of the fact that many of the ships were sunk along the way during the war. But he said, I've been training for this. And it turned out he was one of the only survivors, because he did have his ship sink, but he'd been training himself in cold water immersion, and he was able to survive until he was found. So that increases vigor and strength and allowed him to do that. So that's one application of it. Not a therapeutic, but just a survival application. So it may be used, actually, the pail pour, to complete other hydrotherapy treatments. So at the very end of a fomentation or wet sheet wrap or other types of hydrotherapy, you could do a pail pour over the individual as a quenching kind of ending of the treatments. It's often after a full bath treatment or a salt glow treatment. And that would be great in a salt glow treatment, because it would allow the practitioner to rinse the client off completely and have the salt rinsed away from after the salt glow rub. So it may be given in a bathtub, so either standing or sitting. So the bottom picture shows an individual standing in a tub. I put the top picture in because it's showing the individual standing in a water tub, a tub of hot water. So you could just draw warm water into the bathtub there that the gentleman is standing on. But the idea is that they would be standing in a tub of hot water to give a general warming sensation to the body. So if your feet are warm, generally the rest of your body is warm. Now, I'm not sure that this particular example here would be OSHA approved today, especially noting the swivel stool the man is standing on, but that may have some benefits there as well for the practitioner. I don't know. Just an interesting observation. But you want to have the pails of water ready with differing temperatures. So you'll have 3 to 4 different pails of water starting at 100 degrees and then incrementally moving down 90, 85, 80, depending on the type of reaction you're looking for or effect. So it's a mild tonic, health promoting. So if they are coming straight from a warm bath, you want to lower the temperature of the water to a lower below 80, and you're going to do 2 pails instead of the 4. So that basically that's a treatment ending protocol as opposed to just the pail pour being the treatment. Now, this particular individual here in the lower picture is having a spinal pour and a pour over the back, the lower back. So if the following pours lower the temperature till the third is in the following pours, so we're going to be looking at some additional pours. The third pour will be between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And then once you've done your final pour, vigorously dry the person with a towel. So they're basically going to have a friction rub down with a towel to have them dry. So a local pail pour. So there are we just looked at a general pale pore with the entire body. Now we're looking at a variety of different local pale pores. So there's a local hot pore, a neutral pore, a cold pore, a contrast pore, so that's going to be hot and cold, and then some special situations that call for local pale pores. So basically you're pouring water onto a specific body area, unlike the individual here just doing a wholesale dump over the top of the head. It was just a great picture. So the benefits is they're simple and short applications of the pale pores. So you have one is going to be a cold pale pore to the hips. This is something that you would use following a hot shallow bath or a hot sitz bath, and that is focusing on the pelvic region, the lower abdominal, pelvic area, hips. And basically that helps to reinvigorate and draw the blood away and from, basically cause pumping of the blood in the pelvic region to prevent chilling in the pelvic area once the treatment is finished. So it seems counterintuitive to have a cold quench, but what that does is actually creates a warming effect. You vasodilated with the hot sitz bath and the cold or the shallow bath, and then you do a quick vasoconstriction with the pale pore, and then it will vasodilate again to warm the area. So secondly, you want to use using small to large volumes of pores to local body regions with a focused physical issue. So if you have an area where there's a problem on a limb or on the torso, so again, we're using the picture here of the individual having a lower back, must have some lower back pain. When you're doing a pale pore, like in the two pictures here, you want to be within a distance away. You don't want to do a close pore. You want to do 3 to 5 inches away, up to 1 to 2 feet. So the gentleman doing the lower back is right at the upper extremity of that, maybe even 3 feet there on that particular pore. I hope he has a mop because it looks like it could be splattering outside of his tub. So that's the distance that that water is going to be traveling downward before it hits the body. And this would be, I mean, you could, if you lived in a place where you had a waterfall, wouldn't that be awesome? You could just go out and sit in the waterfall and have your pale pore, just a continuous pale pore. So you want to judge the distance by the body part and its location and the integrity of the tissue and the issue that is going to be, addressed or resolved. So if it's tender, may not stand a distance that's further away because there's going to be a higher impact as compared to a close, low flow. But the key here is that there's a volume of water that's going over the area that's being treated as opposed to just the contrast of heat and cold, fomentations, etc., that are often used. So a local hot pore, we have that's very helpful in helping to relieve pain on the regions where it's used. It can be rapidly applied, so it has a tonic effect. Again, that's tending towards health, has a strengthening effect. Then we have the local neutral pore, and the neutral pore is going to be body temperature that's right, actually water that's more about body temperature, a neutral temperature. It's a relaxing pore, especially when applied to the spine. And then it can be sleep-inducing and relax the nerves, particularly the central nervous system, because those are the nerves of the spine. And then all the other peripheral nerves come in and go out of those. Then you can do a local cold pore. So these are brief and rapid pores, or you can use brief and rapid pores, and they're stimulating and tonic in nature, again, tending towards health. So that's just like a rapid pore is going to have a higher intensity impact versus a prolonged pore. So a prolonged pore would be a slow pore. It can be inflammatory, reducing, congestion reducing, and promote the activity of white blood cells. So this could be something that could be beneficial over a wound area or an area that had an infection. A long cold pore to the head is helpful in reducing fever. One of the things that I think was one of the examples given of a early hydrotherapy treatment. Kind of the rediscovery of hydrotherapy was noted in the history of our health message by I'm forgetting the name. I'm looking right at the book, but I remember the name of the author of it. But it was of a man who was on a ship who was out at sea, and everybody had just fevers and were dying and just very, very tough. And he's like, he had to get out of the hold. He was sick too, but he got out of the hold, went up on deck, and he got doused with the water from the storm that went over him. It was cold water. And he noticed that there was a positive effect after that. And so he began dousing himself with buckets of water. And that cold pour over the head helped to reduce his fever and improve his condition. And he went on to experiment with other sailors with that cold head pour and was able to save a number of them from the fevers and the sickness that they were affected with on this long voyage. That was kind of part of the rediscovery of hydrotherapy during earlier times. So you can also do a local alternate hot and cold pour. So this is going to have a similar effect as a contrast shower. So it's a very powerful tonic and stimulant. So tonic, again, is health promoting. It results in blood increases, so that can be hematopoiesis, which is the term for blood cell formation, kind of increasing volume of blood, but also increasing circulation, because the hot and cold acts as a pump, like a second heart, essentially, because you're causing vasoconstriction, vasodilation, and that pushes the blood away, draws it in, away, draws, so that it can derive blood from other organs. So it draws from other parts of the body. As the blood comes in, rushing in through the vasodilated vessels with the hot water, it's got to come from somewhere. So it comes from nearby organs. And then suddenly it's shunted away as vasoconstriction takes place with a cold treatment. One of the things that's noted with that is increased white blood cell activity. That's what this picture shows, is a white blood cell there in the lighter colored cell around some red blood cells and some other, even looks like some deformed cells there. But it draws white blood cells and promotes their production. It's particularly helpful in areas that have infection associated with it, but it's also helpful when an area can't be immersed for some reason. So the trunk or thigh boils, so it's a little hard to submerge that unless you're in a whole tub of water. So you can do a pail pour on a particular local area effectively. So the hot and cold alternating is both a tonic, a stimulant, and an immune system white blood cell activator in drawing it to the area. So there's some special uses of various types of pail pours. You can do a local limb pail pour to the arm, hand, foot, etc. Just you want to pour over a body part, not over the body part, but over that part is going to have a tray over it, so over a tub or a sink or something like that to catch the excess water that goes down. Do a spinal application like we saw with the individual in the tub, except it'll go all the way up to the back of the neck. You can sit on the edge of the tub or on the tub in a stool and pour over the individual. And then you can do a head pour for someone who's bedridden. So this picture here is just of an individual who's laying on a table, could be in a bed with their head out over, extended beyond the edge of the bed. And then you could put a tray down below that, support their head with your hand to keep it from hyperextending. And then the pot would be below to catch the water. You could do a head pour in a bedridden individual. So that would be one way to do it. The other way would just be to do it as you're standing or bending over.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.